Hi, and welcome to this edition of Digital Tutors Archicad template training. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about the attributes in a little bit more detail. So we have the attribute manager here. So say, for instance, you had a project that you worked on in the past. You had some custom pen types or fill types that you wanted to bring across. You can always bring them in using the attribute manager. So if you were to open, say, let's just open lesson 1. So here you can see you have all your different fill types, and these are the surfaces. And if you go through, you can see once you click through here, you can select individually which ones you want to bring across, and you can just bring them over as appending it, which means it'll put it to the bottom of the stack, or by the index number, so that I'll put it in with whichever index number that this is associated with, and it'll replace whatever is associated with that one, or it'll do it by name. So if you have one that's exactly the same name, it'll replace the one that was there already. So this is a good place to look at, different projects and how they're what their attributes are, and then bring them into your project if you wanted to. This is also where you might want to export all of your current attributes. So you can, I believe you can select all, append, and then save as. Yeah. So you can select all your attributes, appending by, the whatever it was in here originally, but that doesn't matter because there's nothing there, and you can save them. You can also merge other attributes and then bring them in. So let's look at individual attributes. So let's just talk quickly about the layers again. So again, when you're setting up your layers, and we'll talk about this in the next lesson, but you really want to make sure that your layers are organized and your naming convention represents what you want within the project. Also, it's important to have a layer combination associated with all of your different potential views that are saved. So when you're saving a view, so say if you're saving this current view here, what we're looking at, so it's saying the first floor. Let's just put it on floor plan, and look at this a little bit later, but it's always important to have your layer combination associated with whatever is in this folder. Sometimes if you were to, and I've seen this a lot, and this is just kind of something that happens, I think, with teams that, you're working fast and you're trying to just save something. If you right click, you could just say save view and place on layout. And if you save that view and place it on layout, it creates it outside of here. Oops. So let me do that again. So save view and place on layout. So if I just quickly wanted to make a sheet, let me just make this correct. So I just want the frame to fit. I guess it is. Okay, anyways. So here you can see out here it says custom here. Avoid that at all cost. What that means is that your layers aren't associated with the layer combination. This is a very sloppy technique. You want to avoid that, but you can always go back and change it later. But also a second thing to avoid is that, see how it's outside this kind of folder scenario? You also want it to be associated with a folder. Just more organized. It makes it a little bit cleaner, easier to work with. So that's just one thing with the layers. So line types again. We'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later. But just a brief kind of review of this, you definitely have a lot of different line types. They have all these various different adjustments that can be made within them. And then you can create a new one. They can be, a dash symbol. It can be a dash. It can be a symbol. It can be a duplicate of whatever you have going on in here. And then you can also create custom line types by using the line tool as a base. But if you were to say, I don't know, something like this, like a hatch, you want it like this, you can copy this, and you can say new. And you can paste this element in there. So now you're creating your own kind of custom hatching, spacing, and everything that's associated with that. So let's just look at that. So we just created it. And of course you can't see it, it's at the bottom, but it's there. So that's what we just created there. And it can be all sorts of craziness. Okay, so that's just briefly talking about line types. And now fills, again, lots of customization possibilities within this. And a lot come with it, but you do have a few different types of fills. So you have solid fills, and then you have vectorial fills, and you also have... let's see if you can see it here. You have the symbol fills, and then you also have image fills. And these all have different representations of how they look in different kind of scenarios. So you can adjust all these. So if you wanted to make it a different size, and then you have symbol fills, which are using... instead of points, as you can see here, these are using point as spacing. These are more, you have more adjustments here, but they're also using whatever dimensioning standard that you're using, or measuring standard that you're using. And then you can adjust the pattern of how those look. And then you have image fills. Image fills are an actual image that is placed in, I believe it's the two-dimensional aspects of it. Yeah, you can only do it actually for cover fills or drafting fills. But this is an actual image, so it's a little bit more realistic. And then these are just more solid fills. So you can adjust the opacity of them, but you can't have like this kind of line work within those solid fills. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then so building materials, this is one to be cognizant of and how you set it up, because this will affect a lot of different elements within the project. So you have some basic information, which is what the fill type is going to look like when you place this material. So in the two-dimensional representation, this is how it's going to look, and then you have the material that's associated with it. But more importantly, you have this priority, which is going to define how these materials will interact with one another. So say you have like iron here. Iron is showing up as a higher priority than brick. So whenever these two elements interact, iron will win out. It'll either overlap it or it'll intersect it in a way that makes it more prominent. And we'll go on this a little bit later. And then composites. Composites is also another critical aspect to setting up a project. And you're going to come with these basic composites out of the box. But for the most part, I mean, you'll have like, some basic walls, but you definitely want to adjust these so they fit your building type or your wall types. We'll talk about that later. And then the next two things that you want to be cognizant of is probably the zone categories, which you just want to set this up so it looks the way that you want. And then you also have the profile manager. So these will be the custom profiles that you'll use. So you might want to import a certain amount of these prior to getting started. And we'll go into all this in a little bit. And thanks, and looking forward to seeing you in the next lesson.